Well, it seems that Putin may have began with the end in mind. The Russian war, US-led sanctions, the ruble, and now gold highlight the reality that Putin is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Call it short-sightedness, arrogance, or stupidity, but many are missing the real end game. Putin has silently declared check or even discovery check on most of the Western world. This video will focus on the potential impacts of Russia's latest moves and what it means for us holders of physical gold. In an attempt not to bury the lead, this is going to be incredibly bullish for gold. Now, I know you've heard that before, but I do believe this is one of those moments when we will look back years from now and point to this exact moment. Unfortunately, everyone else is focused on all the wrong things, in my opinion. But before we jump into this, I want to be clear. At Stackers, we are apolitical. We only discuss and cover these topics in the context of what it means for us as stackers and not for the sake of politics. With that said, I am not supportive of Putin or Russia. And frankly, what is occurring is just disheartening. My goal here is to simply look at the breadcrumbs and find where the loaf of bread went or is going. So let's talk about it. While I was planning for this video, I just kept finding more and more breadcrumbs that lead me to believe that Putin has calculated many of the moves we are seeing today as early as 2013. To avoid creating like a 30-minute video, I've opted to highlight some of Putin's main moves since 2013 with a particular focus on what it means for gold. I'll be ignoring or kind of partitioning out a number of related or even interconnected topics, so don't at me in the comments. What I've tried to do here is to break it down into kind of key points or decisions or moves that were made, Putin's chess moves, and the implications for gold. And you know I brought the receipts just in case. So let's jump straight into it. So let's get into the slides, and I'm going to cover the highlights, and there are quotes in here, the things that you can read that bring home the point further. Since invading Crimea, Russia has strengthened and increased its gold reserves in anticipation of this moment. In doing so, they've also strengthened their relationship with China and planning for de-dollarization. Reports are that Russia and China leaders have met more than 30 times since 2013. And let's not forget that they agreed to a 30-year gas deal with China back in 2014. Russia has also been making moves with Saudi Arabia by creating a security agreement. And again, that was to de-dollarize and definitely weaken the petrodollar as the world's reserve currency. Then we had the US and the EU ban Russia from the SWIFT payment system and banned its trading of gold. Then you had the US ponder out loud about maybe we should ban Russian gold. And so while these moves were definitely definitive and were meant to send a message to Putin and Russia, it seems like Putin was very prepared. So let's cover the chess moves and the implications of what all this means, because that's why you're really here. So after all the sanctions from the US and from the world, Russia then declares that oil, natural gas, and commodities must be paid in rubles or gold to unfriendly countries. And this was a brilliant move because it starts to weaken the petrodollar as the world's currency reserve. Any payments made in ruble will only strengthen the ruble, which was the whole point of the sanctions. And then it would absolutely start to develop a connection or even a relationship between gold as money and connecting it to commodities like oil and gas. Very important. Russia then removed its 20% value-added tax for gold purchases. And this made it very easy now for Russians to go out and purchase physical gold, thereby shoring up their economy and protecting its citizens. But there's more to that as well. They then set a price from the central bank of 5,000 rubles for 1 gram of gold. I'm sure people heard of that. Roughly, that's about $1,880 an ounce at the current exchange rate. So now we actually have Russia saying certain things are worth a certain dollar amount. And that's important now because now what this does is kind of set a floor for the value of gold in relation to at least oil below current market rate. And so now you start to see that there is a floor being set by Russia for the value of gold and linking it to things like oil and gas. This is very, very powerful when it comes to gold as money. And the response has been amazing in Russia. VTB Bank started selling gold 4 weeks ago, and they said that they've had more than 200 orders, and the most common product in demand is the 1 kilogram bar, so $40,000 to $50,000. Another bank indicated that the demand for gold and palladium has quadrupled in the last few weeks. So why is this so important? Well, let's get into it. The moves, one, it starts to support domestic miners in Russia that were faced with the difficulty of figuring out what they were going to do with their gold. And some thought that it was going to force Russia to have to go to secondary markets to dump their gold to keep their economy afloat, and that would actually drive down the price. But purchasing gold to Russian citizens, removing that value-added tax, fixing it to a particular amount of 5,000 rubles has resulted in people buying. And you see, this move is very important because instead of Russia being frozen out of the international market, Russia has now created its own market for itself. And so the gold that wasn't going to make it to market has created its own market. And selling it at a discount actually makes Russian gold more attractive and enticing for other countries to come in and purchase. And if countries come in and they purchase using rubles, it only strengthens the economy for Russia. And another very important piece of information to consider is now, instead of the gold that Russia normally produces making it to market, it now stays in Russia. Additionally, Russia has more demand on its side. It brings greater balance to the supply and the demand in the gold market. And so essentially, Russia has created a whole new market for gold that didn't exist before. And what makes this interesting is this could lead us to a situation like we saw in the nickel market, where all of a sudden these ETFs don't have access to the same amount of gold that they're out there shorting or whatever it is the banks are doing, because Russia represents 9.5% of the gold production. Now, I know people have been talking about, well, this is great. Russia is they're moving towards a gold-backed currency. I don't know. I don't know if they're moving towards a gold-backed currency, and actually, I don't know if I really care, because there are far more important forces here. That Russia will keep its production, so there'll be 9.5% less gold on the market. Less supply always increases demand. All of a sudden, there's a large number of gold buyers which couldn't access the market in the same way before because they had a 20% value-added tax. That's going to mean higher prices. Russia is going to have greater wealth kept within its country because now it's keeping more gold, its citizens are keeping more gold, and they're going to have real money. And all of these moves around paying Russia in rubles or in gold ultimately is going to weaken the US dollar, which almost always leads to an increase in the value of gold. And so all this means is we are in a situation where now there will be more demand and less supply. Fundamentally, that means higher prices. So those are my main takeaways. And this is why I always say it's important for you to invest time before you invest money. Because if you become a student of the investment vehicle that you focus on, you learn to think differently, process information differently, and make decisions based on what you see and not what someone else is telling you, which usually they tell you after the fact. This information, these moves by Russia are critical, and they are making me even more bullish, and which will cause me to stack even harder in the coming months. Because see, I can see out there that there's a wave coming, and I'm not going to wait until the wave hits the shoreline to determine what my next moves are going to be. I don't need a pundit or some figure out there on TV to come out months later and say, oh my God, we should have seen that Russia was doing this and that the real opportunity was to buy 3 months ago. Smart money sees what's going on and is silently making moves. So the real question for you is, what are you going to do with this information? Please comment what your takeaways are from this video. I don't normally do these kind of things, but I thought it was so important because everything I'm reading is just missing the point. The ultimate point for us as investors of physical gold and silver is less supply, more demand. And that may take a few months to play itself out, may not be shown until the end of the year, but it's going to make a huge difference. And if the floor for gold is 1880 and the price of gold today is around 1930, I don't feel so bad paying 1930 for my gold because I know where the floor is now. And that's what Russia has given us. Again, share your comments. I'd love to hear what you took away from this particular video. Give me a thumbs up if you like the content. And just so you know, every time you give me a thumbs up, someone in America buys an ounce of gold. That's it for today, folks. Always stack smarter. Never stop learning.